James.
Colonel, I'm hearing a lot of discontent out of Washington from the Republican caucus on the Ukraine issue, and a lot of them questioning the wisdom of continuing to pour money into this conflict, especially because there's a lot of concerns about corruption and other issues, as well as also the threats of escalation, given that Russia sees Ukraine as such an existential issue. I'd love to get your reaction to that and, make the case one way or the other that this funding is essential because we've also seen Sergei Lavrov, I think, overnight say that they would negotiate but not have a ceasefire. What are the prospects then, with all of this for some sort of end to the conflict? Does it have to be that Russia is pushed all the way back to the pre-invasion borders? Where does this end?
Yeah, I do think that supporting Ukraine is essential, and it's Britain has provided a huge amount of resources, military and financial, to Ukraine. Other European countries as well, the United States, the lion's share. I think it's necessary to do that because otherwise, if Russia simply is able to walk over Ukraine, which it would be able to without our support, despite their fighting prowess, that essentially amounts to a defeat for NATO. It's an encouragement for Russia to further Russian aggression. And also, meanwhile, behind the scenes, China is looking to see how the West reacts. So I think, very briefly, it is an essential thing for the US, for Britain, for other countries to support Ukraine. As far as the future is concerned, unless Ukraine can succeed in its current counteroffensive, and I don't think that's by any means certain, then I believe that Biden will want to have some kind of peace agreement by, say, at the latest, the middle of next year. And I think that's on his mind in order to, again, be able to say, I brought peace to Ukraine. It didn't work out as we wanted, but I brought peace to Ukraine before the election. The trouble with that is that the only agreement that Russia's going to have is going to involve them holding the territory they've got now. So, again, it amounts to a defeat for Ukraine, it amounts to a victory for Russia, and it amounts to a defeat for NATO. But I think that's the way things are looking at present. It may not be the end of the conflict entirely. It may be a frozen conflict, for example, like we see in between North and South Korea, except perhaps a bit more active.
Liz.
Colonel, what, if anything, do you make of the fact you just fleetingly mentioned China? I was interested to note that at the Mexican Independence Day celebration, their military parade, the week before last, the People's Liberation Army marched in it, as did Russia. The Mexican president came under fire for this, but defended it. Obviously, we know Russia and China are very cozy at the moment, and here they are seeming to be on extremely friendly terms with Mexico. Obviously, Mexico shares a border with the US. What, if anything, do you make of this?
Yeah, there are a number of countries who are friendly and supportive of both Russia and China. And that includes, as well as Mexico, it also includes South Africa. It includes, to an extent, at least India. It includes North Korea. North Korea, of course, President Putin and Kim had a meeting in Russia last week, which I believe they will have agreed for North Korea to supply them with weapons in the fight in Ukraine. So there is this group of countries, many others as well, who are supporting Russia and obviously on the side of China as well. And I think that China is the key player in all this. If China wasn't behind Russia and supporting Russia and buying Russian oil and providing Russia with a huge amount of technical capability that can have dual use, even if they haven't provided them directly with weapons, I think if China hadn't given that support, Russia would be unable to prosecute the war as it is. And I believe that, whatever happens in this conflict, the net winner in it all is China. If Russia is severely weakened by it already has been weakened, but if the outcome is a weakened Russia, then it's heavily dependent on China. If the West prevails in some way, Ukraine prevails in some way, then again Russia will be dependent also on China. So I think either way, China is going to be probably the only net winner in this whole conflict.
Absolutely. And just very quickly before we go, 30 seconds, Richard, area of the Middle East that you're very familiar with. What did you make of Bibi's comments that the Iranian nuclear threat needs to be curtailed with a, Israeli military commensurate of threat, I guess he was saying?
Yeah, I think the reality here is when he met Biden, he was hoping to, perhaps not hoping, but trying to persuade Biden to present a credible military threat against the Iranian nuclear program, but that's not going to happen. Biden, as I mentioned before, Biden wants this deal. He wants a nuclear deal, which gives him a foreign policy win, in his view, at least. But essentially, as the Obama nuclear deal did, paves the way for a nuclear weapon for Iran, and therefore endangers Israel. And consequently, Israel is pretty much the only country that is, it's not the, pretty much it is the only country that's going to stand up against the Iranian nuclear threat. And if necessary, I believe Israel will carry out further military action against Iran to prevent that happening.